Hey everybody, this is Erica, the technology nerd likes to film stuff, and this is part 2 of the Galaxy Note 8 review. So I just want to jump right into this. This review isn't going to have a bunch of topics to it. This is more of an overflow from part 1, which I'm going to link right here. There are many topics in part 1. So again, I will link it right here, and I will also link it in the description as well. So in this part 2 of the review, I want to talk about Bixby, specifically Bixby Voice and all that I can do with it, and how to disable it, truly disable it, and remap this Bixby key. That is if you can't stand it and don't want to give it a chance after I show you what I'm going to show you. And also I want to talk about the cameras as well. So before jumping into that, I did get a question several times in part 1, which was, do you have that light leaking along the sides here? And yes, I do. But this is just physics. So you've got curved glass, right? And from the panel, this does not have a backlight. It's an emissive technology, but we do have the light that travels along the glass and ends up showing here along the side. So this is normal. This is the technology. I even see this with the LG V30. I've seen this with every single curved Samsung device since the S6. So yes, it's there. All of them that I have seen are like this. So I hope that answers your question. So moving on to talking about Bixby. Bixby is Samsung's digital artificial intelligence assistant. And there's a button right here. This is the Bixby button. Now this is something people are either going to love or hate, because right now you cannot remap the Bixby button. When you click once right here, it brings you into Bixby Home. What you can do right now is disable the Bixby key for opening Bixby Home. Go ahead and deselect that, get out of here. Now when you press it, you can see that nothing happens. But when you hold it down, Bixby Voice is always going to pop up. So make sure you go just a little bit deeper into settings, because you'll see it says voice right here, and then it says Bixby Voice. Talk to Bixby and get responses back. So right now, if I hold down right here, you're going to get Bixby Voice popping up. When you deselect this, nothing. Nothing happens now. Once you exit out of this, you've essentially got a dead key. It does nothing. And I can tell you guys that at first I did not give Bixby Voice a chance at all. As soon as I got the Galaxy Note 8, I disabled it immediately because it was so nosy and so sensitive, and it always would activate in the most inconvenient times. So I went and did my little workaround and turned it off. But that is when my friend told me that actually there is a setting that I might want to pay attention to. So go underneath Settings, and you can see it says Voice Wake Up. When you click on this, I turned it down to low sensitivity. So this helps some people, but what I think is really going to help you is when you click on Improve Voice Wake Up Accuracy. So it says record your voice again in places you usually use Bixby. The more recordings you make, the more accurate Bixby will get. So this is what really helped. Many times I went and trained Bixby in different types of environments, and just several times in the same environment, just say at home. And I have not had it waking up like crazy anymore. It's very rare if it gets activated by accident. So do this and give Bixby a chance. So it is pretty annoying that Samsung has all but forced this new assistant on us, but you still can use the Google Assistant alongside it at the same time. So don't think that anything is disabled. Like for example, if I hold down right here, you can see it pulls up the Google Assistant. You can use them at the same time. I can even say, okay, Google. And there it is. At the same time, I can say, hi, Bixby. And there that is too. So you have a choice. First, let's show you what apps are compatible. So it's compatible with Samsung's apps and also some third-party apps. I'm often finding that I get more and more impressed as I play with it. Click right here. Voice apps and services. This gives you a good idea. So here are all of Samsung's applications, things like gallery, contacts, phones, settings, messages, camera, Bixby Vision, reminder, so on and so forth. Basically, you can control this entire phone almost hands-free with using Bixby Voice. Then we've got Bixby Labs, which experiments with some other applications, although it may not work as expected. And here are the recommended third-party applications, things like social media type applications, Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, even Gmail, several Google services. Although weirdly, the Chrome browser doesn't work with this. If you want to ask Bixby Voice to browse to find something, you have to use Samsung's browser. That makes me cranky. I hope they'll fix that in the future. So you have two different options. You can wake it with Bixby Voice, or you can use the Bixby button where you have to hold on to it, then release it when you're done with your command. So for example, turn down the display brightness to 0.
Done. It's now at 0.
0. Yeah, that's how you say 0, Bixby. That's nice. But you can see that I've turned down the brightness all the way. On the same token, we can do this. Turn brightness all the way up to 100%. And let go. And there you go. And it gives you points as you go along, and I can reward it saying, yes, great, did a good job. I also really like that I can activate things like the flashlight. Hi, Bixby. Turn on flashlight. So there's the flashlight. Hi, Bixby. Turn off flashlight. There you go.
All right, I turned the flashlight off.
Now, a lot of you might argue, well, I can already do those things with the Google Assistant. And even with Siri, for example. But what's nice about Bixby is that you can have it do more deeper system integration type of control. So we can say, hi, Bixby. Open camera, change video size to UHD, and start recording video. Opens camera, changes the setting, and says, okay, it's recording. So that's pretty cool if you need to be hands-free, for example. If I push stop right here, I can go and show you that it indeed did change the settings that I wanted it to. So there you go. Ultra HD. So that's nice and all, where you can go and control Samsung applications, but you can also mix Samsung's applications with third-party applications. So if I don't have my hands free and I suddenly remembered that I wanted to share something. Hi, Bixby. Open gallery and share the last screenshot to Twitter. So it opens it, picks the last screenshot, and it puts it on Twitter.
Let's enter the message you want to send.
And then it lets me enter the message that I want to send. How cool is that? That surprised me. I didn't expect it to be able to do that. And then you can also dictate inside of an application to Bixby as well. So if I go ahead and hold down this button, check out the battery life today, and then release it. And you can see that it's done that. How am I supposed to know on the fly how to say that? What if I get tongue-tied? Isn't that just going to take a long time, for example, versus just going and posting it myself? Well, yes, but there are things that are called quick commands, and those are pretty awesome. So if I say, open quick commands.
Sure, here are some quick commands you can use.
So what this is going to let you do is nest several commands together so that they're all done at the same time. So I've got good night and good morning, and nested here is the do not disturb mode, blue light filter turn on, and turn the brightness down to 0. So if I'm in a very dark environment, that's as low as it'll go. This is genuinely how I configure my phone at night before I go to bed. So this makes sense. And then there's good morning. So it's going to turn off the blue light filter, turn off do not disturb, and also set the display brightness to 50. So let's go ahead and try that. Hi, Bixby. Good night.
Got it. Do not disturb is on now. Okay, it's on. Done. It's now at 0.
0.
All set.
So in the morning then I would say, hi, Bixby. Good morning. There you go. So that is just awesome. But then you would ask something like, well, what about unlocking the phone in the morning? Because obviously you haven't touched the phone yet, for example. You can unlock the phone too, with your voice. So if I say, hi, Bixby. Good night.
Tell me your voice password to continue.
There we go.
Okay, it's on.
And now it goes through the
Okay,
motions.
it's on. Done. It's now at 0. All set.
Now all of this is still pretty overwhelming, so go ahead and open up the Bixby Home. And there's plenty of things that you can do. So you've got tutorials, and this just shows you so many examples of what you can do. And they also give you some video tutorials so you can go and check out the YouTube channel where they give specific examples. Meet Bixby, manage your alarm, check the weather, tinker with settings, connect to social media. So it's pretty much endless. You need to commit the time to learn how to use this. But I can see that this could be a good start for the future of really interacting with your phone with your voice. I know a lot of people already who will use this and connect to their smart home, and they will turn off their lights and all of that stuff, nested with the good night quick command as well. So on that note, if you're somebody who really can't stand Bixby Voice still and you just want to use this key for something else, let me show you how to do that. So I have downloaded 2 applications. I've got BX Disabler, and this is the plugin. It should actually automatically download as well, and BX Actions, and this is the pro version called Coffee because it has a feature that the free version doesn't have. So I'm going to go ahead and open BK Disabler first, and what this application allows you to do is disable anything on your Samsung phone, whether it's system settings, bloatware, or things that you have installed. So right now I've got all these favorites. These are all the things I've had turned off previously that I just don't ever use. And you can see all this Bixby stuff here. So I'm going to go ahead and disable all of the Bixby stuff, but I have to keep Bixby Voice enabled. And don't worry, this will stop working as well. This is just the service that's going to be remapped. So Bixby Dummy, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff is disabled. Now I go underneath BX Actions. So you hit Start the app. And when you do that, it gives you 2 different settings. You've got the option for control mode and blocking mode. This is what's included with the free application, and this one is what really lets you completely disable Bixby Home and take full control of this button and have other features to this button as well. So let's just go ahead and activate the control mode. I already have everything set up. Go outward. Let's look at my actions. Choose actions for the Bixby button. So I've got the Google Assistant here now. On single press, if I double press it, it's going to open the flashlight. If I hold down for long press, it's going to open Google Keep. You can also do things for lock screen as well. So when I do this, there you go. And there you go again. Click right here. There's the Google Assistant. If I hold it down, so when I was showing you guys how Bixby Voice worked, I toggled something on. So you need to go back underneath settings, make sure that Bixby Voice is toggled off. Because now when I hold down on it, you can see it just opens up my notes. So now everything works as intended. Double click, click once, brings up Google Assistant, then hold. Ta-da! Cool. So you no longer have a pointless button when you disable all of the Bixby stuff. Now, while we're at it, if you disable all of those Bixby settings that I showed you, now if you're underneath the camera and you hit Bixby Vision, nothing happens. So you can see Bixby really is gone. If only I could remove Bixby Vision from the UI, that would be nice. But you can see that truly you are no longer bothered by Bixby if you disable everything like I showed you. So that is Bixby and what you can do if you don't like Bixby. Let me know what you guys think about that. So let's go ahead and move on to talking about the cameras. The first thing I want to talk about with this camera setup is the specifications. So you can see we have 2 different cameras here. Both are 12 megapixel sensors. This is the main lens. It's got an aperture of f1.7. This one has an aperture of f2.4. This is the telephoto lens. Both of them are optically image stabilized, which is just awesome. The main camera sensor is the same sensor that we have on my Galaxy S8. This is the Sony IMX333 sensor. I'm not sure about the telephoto lens though, although from what I've seen, quality is comparable. Then taking a look at the front, we've got an f1.7 aperture 8 megapixel camera, and they say it's got an 80-degree field of view. Next, let's take a peek at the camera interface. I was able to execute it by double-clicking on the power button. That's a setting you can turn off if you'd like to. The first change I noticed over the Galaxy S8 is that we've got labels here. You can see this says Bixby Vision, Live Focus, and stickers. And I actually like this because now I know what I'm looking at. Instead of having little ambiguous looking icons, I know what each of these do. So starting from right to left, we've got the gallery button, we've got the shutter key, and also it functions to be able to zoom in and out. Then we've got the video record button. We've got Bixby vision, just like we've seen on the Galaxy S8. Stickers, like we've got with the Galaxy S8. And then there's live focus, and this is new. So live focus is your portrait type mode, which is going to let you use both of these cameras in order to create a depth effect. So you should have a really nice shallow depth of field in the background and a nice in focus foreground. And I will talk about this a little bit more in a second. Now right here we have the ability to switch between the two different cameras. So you see we've got our main camera and then we've got the telephoto camera as well. Now in good lighting, when you hit the 2x zoom button, it's indeed going to use that second camera. But if lighting qualities are not very good and conditions don't permit, it's just going to use the main camera and crop. So you're going to see degradation in quality. And it's like that with all the other dual camera phones that have a telephoto lens that I've played with. Same thing with the OnePlus 5 and also the iPhones. So that's typical. Then over on the left-hand side, if we click right here, we can switch to the front-facing camera. We've got a setting that allows you to have a full screen view, which is nice. We've got flash, auto off and on, and the ability to get under settings. Now what really bothers me right here is I'm used to having the auto HDR setting, and now they've hidden it under menus. So here it is right now, HDR rich tone. You can see that I have to go and take an extra step. Now that's not a big deal, but I think this belongs under here, or I should be able to choose what I want to be here and I can't. So I'm not so happy with that oversimplification with this interface. Looking a little bit under settings with what we can do with this, you can see it says rear camera. So you can control your picture size, your video size. Now realize it should say rear cameras, because whatever you set here applies to both cameras on the back. So the sensor has a 4:3 aspect by default, 12 megapixels. You can choose what you'd like here. Then down here you can see we have the RAW setting hidden. If you're new to Galaxy phones right now, you may not have known that this is where this is hidden. Going down the list, you can choose your video size. So you have the option for UHD, which is 4K, Quad HD, Full HD 60 frames per second, and so on and so forth. And it's also useful that they tell you with each of these modes what features don't work. Then moving back out again, we have options for tracking autofocus, HDR like I showed you, then the front-facing camera, and so on and so forth. You can see there's auto HDR for the front-facing camera as well. Then you've got some common settings. You have the option for motion photo, which is kind of like what the iPhone does, kind of like a live photo. Video stabilization. Now don't get confused with video stabilization, because this is electronic image stabilization that works in conjunction with the optical image stabilization. And what I have found is that it's best when you keep this off or the footage looks kind of wobbly. There's an option for a floating camera button, which I find really nice. So you see here you've got an extra camera button. So just say that you can't reach this with the way that you're holding the phone. You can place this wherever you want that's convenient for you. And I use this all the time. So that's a thumbs up. So when you swipe to the left, you're going to end up with your filters. And then if you pull to the right, you have access to a lot of other settings. You got your Pro mode, panorama, slow motion, hyperlapse, food. You can download a few more modes. And Pro mode, of course, is excellent. So if you really want to hone in on how your image looks, this is where you can do it. ISO, shutter speed, your filters, your autofocus. You can choose your white balance and also exposure compensation. So this is a very full-featured and powerful camera application. Now, before I move on to talking about camera quality, I wanted to talk more about this live focus mode, as this is the darling of the Galaxy Note 8. This is the newest feature. And like I mentioned before, it essentially allows you to use both of these cameras in order to create a depth effect. And when it works, it's pretty cool, but I have to tell you guys that it's pretty fidgety. It either works or it doesn't. It always tells you stay around 4 feet away from the subject to take a live focus picture. And if it's not going to work, it complains at you that it's not going to apply the effect due to shooting conditions. And most of the time, I find it complaining that way. So if you're too close or too far or there's not enough light, it will complain at you that the shooting conditions aren't right for this and it's not going to apply the effect. So this is a mode you really have to get to know and have a lot of practice with so that you really get a feel for how it works, or when it's not going to work. If conditions are correct, it's going to tell you live focus is available, and quick and take the picture, because it might tell you that conditions aren't correct a second later. So if you had this selected when you took your picture, it's going to take a shot from both cameras, which is really, really neat. Because take a look at this. Right here it says it's close up. This is the telephoto one. But then it also took a wide angle shot too. So that's kind of like your safety net of sorts. You can see everything that was happening in the background in addition to this close-up photo. Then also you can adjust your background blur. So you can see it's going to keep my little foreground eggy nice and sharp, and everything else in the background is going to be blurred. You can control that. You can save it. And you can save multiple versions of this. So you can see it says save as new file, so I can have it looking like this. Then I can go back in and change it around and save it again. And I can have multiple looks, so that's really nice. So here's a photo that I took out and about of a fire hydrant. We can adjust the background blur. I'm just going to go ahead and turn it off. So you can see that it's just a very boring, flat-looking photo. But as soon as I do this, you can see that the background is very nice and blurred. And this is a very good example. When it works well, it works really well. Sometimes it has issues with the way that it cuts things out. And don't let this be your final judge, because once you hit this button, it does the rendering that it needs to, and it decides intelligently where those lines and edges are. And that looks great. So it's a mode that's very finicky. It's one that you really need to learn to use. It only works in certain conditions, so it can get kind of frustrating, but once you get the hang of it, it's worth it. So now moving on to talking about camera quality, let's start off with the main sensor. Now I took a lot of pictures with it, and I found that it performs so similarly to the Galaxy S8 that I really can't tell the difference, except for if this is just a little bit wider of an angle. So I've got several examples to prove that if you don't believe me. I mean, it's the same sensor. The post-processing and colors look pinpoint almost exactly the same, except for maybe some circumstantial differences. So take a look at these. So if you're trying to decide maybe right now if you should go for the Galaxy Note 8 or the Galaxy S8 based on the camera, the main camera I think is the same. So since the images look so similar, I'm going to include a link right here that you can click on for the camera tests that I did for the Galaxy S8, because that very much applies here. So please check that out. I did not find it necessary to review the same thing twice. So if you'd like to see more about how this performs, click here. There will also be a link in the description as well. So how about that second camera? It's a 12 megapixel camera as well. It doesn't have as wide of an aperture as the main camera does, but to me, processing looks very similar. You've got the oversaturated colors, you've got the sharpening, and to me, just on a daily basis, they both performed pretty similarly. But the thing about this camera here is that I found that I really did not use it all that much. I really think that if this was a very wide angle lens, I would use the second lens more. I think I would have more practical application for that, because all this really does is zoom in. So if you're standing across the street, that's good. You can get a little closer to the subject. Also, if you're taking macro shots, this has got a great minimum focusing distance, so you can get really close to a subject without having to crane your neck. So that's also good. So it doesn't really have all that many applications, but where I use this most is actually during video, because it acts as that second focal length. It acts like a real optical zoom. And since it is optical image stabilized, it's really a good deal. So I don't use this so much for pictures, but I definitely use it for video. But as soon as conditions aren't favorable and the lighting isn't so good, it's going to just go right back to the main camera sensor and crop in the image. But after all of this and messing with it, I think I would have appreciated a very wide angle lens instead of a telephoto lens. So lastly, let's talk about video quality. And the first thing that I want to do is point out a video that I've already done right here, where I compare the Galaxy Note 8 video footage to the iPhone 8. And I found the results to be pretty interesting. I can summarize those right here if you don't want to take a look at this right this second, but I do recommend that you look at it. So the Galaxy Note 8 performs really nicely during video. I found that it does pretty good with dynamic range, exposure is pretty good, colors look really nice, although I noticed that they're not accurate to the scene. And I also noticed that this camera has the propensity to make a scene look darker than it actually is. So I went out on a drive when it was just about high noon, and it looked like it was like 6 p.m. or so. I think that my one gripe with the quality is that when there's a lot of busyness in the scene and movement at the same time, there's a lot of compression artifacts. So I noticed that on the street and also up in the sky, you get a lot of those blocky compression artifacts, and that's something that when I was testing out the iPhone 8, it did not do that. So I find that to be a little bit unfortunate. I saw the exact same thing on the Galaxy S8 Plus as well. So it seems that that's Samsung's methodologies. I also had a chance to test the stabilization, and it works pretty well. My recommendation, though, is to just keep EIS off. So the little setting that says video stabilization, turn that off because it makes the frame look kind of wobbly, especially during 4K video. I noticed that autofocus is really nice and fast under all of the modes except for one. When you are recording in 1080p 60 frames per second, for whatever reason, it just does not want to focus very quickly. I found that to be the exact same thing on the Galaxy S8, so that does not surprise me. But overall, this is a stunning camera. It's really got those good point and shoot chops. If you want to leave auto HDR on, it's going to be just fine for most scenes. If you want to go and hone in on how the image looks, you've also got a manual mode too. So this concludes the end of the camera portion of this review. And I'm going to wrap up this part 2 of the review in general. I covered a lot more things in part 1, so check it out right here. I will also put a link in the description. So this has been Erica, the Technology Nerd Likes to Film Stuff. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Let me know how your guys' experience has been with this device. It's really, really great. My thoughts overall on this phone is that it's probably the most balanced device that you can get right now. Yes, you don't have the quad DAC on it. You don't get the fast updates of the Pixel or Android Oreo right now. But this is a really great ecosystem, the way that Samsung does what it does. Finally, we have a Note phone that hasn't slowed down on me. I think 6 gigabytes of RAM is really a sweet spot for this device. I think it's going to keep on running and running very well. But again, check out part 1 if you want to hear about how this performs. I hope this review helped you guys. Have a good night.